Let's get started. So welcome everyone. My name is Patrika. I'll be emceeing today. Today, our topic is the state of computer vision in enterprise. Just a quick housekeeping item for the audience before we get started. Please make sure that you're using the Q&A box to drop your questions as opposed to the chat. This makes it easier for us to see your questions so that we can hand them over to the panelists so that we can engage with you. So please feel free to ask plenty of questions along the way. Our panelists are very excited to be here. And without further ado, I would love to welcome our panelists to the virtual stage.
Hey, can you turn on our cameras? Okay. Hey guys, it is a great pleasure to be here with the tech gurus who will cover the computer vision from different perspectives. Adam Wenchel, CEO of Arthur, Lin Sun, director at Magic Leap, Bryan Kim, head of growth from Superb AI, and Kevin Ballan, associate director of data science from Bristol Mayor. Computer vision is a topic that I actually grew up in. As a child, I dreamed about being a fingerprint recognition engineer and building systems that look like Mission Impossible scenes. Tons of Chinese inks later, here we are. So I'm here to learn. So everybody, how can you introduce yourself within 2 minutes? Why did you choose computer vision? I'm gonna start with Adam.
Great, thanks, Meltem. I'll try to come in well under 2 minutes, but my name is Adam Wenchel. I'm with Arthur. Arthur.ai is our website, and we focus on model monitoring and providing data science operation console. And so a little bit about my background. I actually started doing AI work about a little over 20 years ago at DARPA. I followed one of my professors over there back when this was all a science project and didn't work particularly well. And computer vision was a very different kind of study than it is now. And since then, I've worked at a number of startups and tech companies. And my last one was acquired by Capital One, where I joined there and was tasked shortly after joining with starting their AI team and scaling up to 300 people. And we did a number of projects, including some involved in computer vision. And then I left in 2018 to start Arthur so that we could help people who are deploying computer vision in the enterprise and other critical areas monitor it. So as you're deploying these models into production, how do you make sure that they're continuing to perform well? How do you recognize drifts in the data? Like if all of a sudden the images coming in or start to take on a very different look, you need to know that because it causes problems for your model. And then how do you explain what your models are doing so that as it's, your models are out there doing amazing classifications or other tasks, object detection, whatever it is, that you can feel really confident in the way they're operating. So that's us. We're a 25-person company headquartered in New York. We just reopened our offices last week, which was super exciting.
Such an exciting journey. Lin?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Lin Sun from Magic Leap, and you know that Magic Leap is a startup and working on the first startup working on the AR, augmented reality, and currently we have the product, the Magic Leap 1, and also we are working on the new product. And you know that the Magic Leap want to bring the magical to the world and to show the different world to the audience, to all the people. And actually, previously, I'm the head of the perception leading the autonomous driving in Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center. And you know that AR, VR, and autonomous driving currently is a very hot topics area. And I'm privileged in both areas. And my PhD from Hong Kong UST, and in my PhD actually I'm working on the computer vision deep learning, mostly in deep learning, and how to understand the world and how to give the high level understanding of the images and the videos, and how to enable the robot to see the world like the human being. And I also had some experience in Stanford University working on the computer vision, deep learning, and also on the robot. And yeah, this is just my general background. If you are interested in the Magic Leap devices and also autonomous driving. I'm here to answer your questions. Yeah, thank you.
Before I move to Bryan, I want to ask you a question. How do you know each other?
Yeah, actually, I know Bryan because Bryan, you know that data is a fuel for the deep learning and computer vision currently. And so Bryan, the company, the super AI is working on the data labeling. And so yeah, previously I'm in Samsung and we have some connections. So Bryan want to provide their tools, their wonderful tools, I should say that, to Samsung and help us to accelerate the labeling. So that's why we have some connections and the world is very small.
I know. Specifically, computer vision world is like a village and we all know each other. Bryan?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Lynn. But yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Bryan Kim. I'm currently head of growth for Squibb AI. As Lynn mentioned, our platform is really just focused on helping ML teams, computer vision teams, just bring a little bit of automation into their data preparation and delivery pipelines. Because, as many of you may know, delivering these high quality data sets is time consuming and it's cost prohibitive sometimes. And that's just something that we've been focusing on and helping teams, really get to the point where they can start to, build these repeatable and iterative pipelines around data labeling and delivery. In terms of background, unlike my colleagues here, I'm not from the AI world. I'm actually a product GTM guy. So I've been launching and building teams across the world for various products in different regions like Korea, Japan, China, and just generally APAC. And I got this amazing opportunity to help Squibb AI really take this part of the market in America and ultimately global. So I've been talking to a lot of data scientists, ML engineers, data engineers for the last year and a half, really understanding where the pain points lie within the workflows themselves, and just really trying to bring a product that would be the most useful and the most efficient for any computer vision team looking to ship these computer vision applications.
This is wonderful. I always tell everybody that there is a room for everybody in this field. The erosion between different departments are really high performance, and everything is coming together. And I think this time AI is gonna be something different than before. And Kevin.
Yeah, hi. So I come to AI a little bit in a roundabout fashion. When I was an undergraduate, I was fascinated by abstract mathematics. And then in graduate school, I pursued neuroelectrophysiology. And almost as a side project, we had some medical imaging to do as a part of a DARPA-funded project. And I was blown away by how easy, off-the-shelf tools work, that I sort of switched career trajectories. I joined Siemens Healthineers in their computer-aided diagnosis department. And we worked on, say, lung cancer diagnoses or screening algorithms that have now been approved as second readers, so they can act almost as a human. And that's only just the beginning. So following Siemens, I joined a pharmaceutical company, Bristol Squibb, where I lead AI imaging development for drug development. And without going into too many details, the sky is really the limit. And just like you said, this is a little bit different than before, and that things are qualitatively different and more exciting.
Wonderful. So with that, I want to move a little bit to the organizational questions. Can you tell us a little bit about computer vision, though? Like, what is it? And what are the different implementation? And what is your organization's specific use case? So who wants to take the stage? Otherwise, I will volunteer somebody. Lynn, I think Lynn wants to take the stage first.
Okay, I can start. And actually broadly speaking, that computer vision is a technology and to enable the computer understanding the high level understanding of the videos and the images. Like I said, that act like a human being, and how to currently a lot of computer vision technology are focusing on the deep learning actually, and the AI. And so here actually we build a lot of deep learning technology, and deep learning accelerate a lot of whatever the industry and the academia research and product. So yeah, you know that previously I'm working on the computer vision and the deep learning for a while during my PhD, and in my PhD actually, you know that the computer vision or deep learning become very hot in 2012. And after Hilton published the papers and also on the deep learning, and also generate or create the toolbox for the deep learning guy to use deep learning to in the computer vision area, such as the image classification, and beat the previous state of art by a large amount. So after that, deep learning become popular, and a lot of researchers put a lot of effort in the image classification understanding part. And for my PhD, actually, I want to do some challenging things. So that's why I choose a video as my PhD topic, and I want to know and understand the spatial and temporal modeling, how to leverage temporal information in the computer vision task, in the deep learning task. So I choose activity recognition and human pose estimation, and also the video analysis as my research topic. And I also do a lot of this kind of research, and I also bring a lot of novel ideas to this area. I think currently my research about the separable spatial and temporal architecture is still very hot in the video analysis and action recognition area. And actually after that, yeah, I'm in the autonomous driving area, and leading the perception team, working on a lot of different topics. And deep learning, actually, you can the magic or elegant way of the deep learning part is that you can feed into the raw data and output the what you want, and you can design the architecture and also design get the label data and get what you want. And such as in my previous experience, the autonomous driving, we want to understand the 3D world, and so we need to get the dynamic objects and the static objects of the world. And so we can use a LiDAR camera to do this kind of understanding. And for my current work, the ImageLeap, the similar things actually, but more challenging, because we want to put the computer vision or deep learning algorithm on the devices. If you see that we have the ImageLeap 1, it's very small devices, very lightweight, and so you want to put very complicated algorithm on this kind of devices is very challenging, and you need to do, besides the 3D understanding, the understanding the world, understanding the interactions, understanding the capability of the human, and you also need to put this algorithm on the devices and make it small and compress algorithm, and so can make it work on this lightweight devices and with a low power and also high speed. Yeah, this kind of things. And so yeah, I think the computer vision actually totally completely change what we understand the world, and also what we can produce for the product. And yeah, in a lot of area, the thing understanding, the eye tracking, head pose, and also the hand tracking, the human body recognition, and the pose tracking, and so this kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, because I studied computer vision and worked on computer vision for a long time with DOT, DARPA, and eventually I figured that I knew nothing about computer vision. So I went back to the PhD to study visual cortex from primates to human to rodents, and I only know one part of the computer vision problem. So I definitely relate to that. But I want to hear a little bit about the Kevin's perspective, because it's a very important subject, the healthcare. So how do you leverage computer vision in your organization, Kevin?
Right. So broadly across any organization that has medical images, and medical images are everywhere, there's so much data that's in it as the course of sort of standard of care, as we would call it. So for instance, anyone who has been diagnosed with lung cancer in the past several years has had a CT scan taken. And that CT scan gets read by a radiologist who's going to look at it. He's going to make some marks. He's going to identify areas where you're going to need a biopsy, anything like that. But the bottom line is there's so much more data than even a radiologist can look at. And if you can correlate that data with the plethora of other data you're able to collect, whether that's how long a patient's going to live, whether that's the ultimate diagnosis that's made, whether they had benign or malignant tumors, anything like that, the sky is sort of the limit in the data that's present there, because the tumor itself is what you're visualizing and what you're seeing. And in terms of the sort of upper bound on how far you can go with that, we don't know yet, because we're still catching up to radiologists. And I don't think we're going to replace them, say, but I think they're going to be made more and more productive until there's fewer and fewer of them that are needed for the more complex cases. And once that happens, I think you're going to see a part where you're truly going to go beyond human capabilities. So in normal, say, computer vision, say for looking at categorizing planes or cats or dogs, you're never going to get better than a human, right? It's going to be hard because that's the upper bound. But for medical imaging, you can go far beyond what a trained radiologist is able to do. And I think that's what makes it sort of so exciting.
That's a very elegant way to describe it. I actually had my own company when I was in academia, because there are a lot of images and each MRI machine has different format. Each EEG has different format. How do you bring all that data together was the biggest question back then. And hopefully it is changing a little bit, but it's a very elegant way to describe the field. Like we can come so far because it's already digital, and as long as we can control the data. So Adam, I want to come back to you. You said that you use different use cases and you have different implementations for your tool platform. Can you tell us a little bit about a specific use case?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So, what we focus on more is we don't develop models for specific use cases ourselves, but we partner with people who do, and our customers do. And so that can be things like medical imaging, as well as, whatever it is, document classification. It can be analyzing aerial footage. There's a huge variety of things our customers are doing with computer imagery. What we do is we help them understand, the performance, right? So what's the accuracy of these once you take them out of the lab? So typically you train it in the lab, you back test it against some historical data, you reach a certain level of accuracy that's appropriate for your use case, and then you deploy it in the real world. But one truth about the real world is it's not static. It doesn't always stay the same. It evolves, right? And so it could be maybe you got a new medical imaging device that captures images slightly different, or maybe you're starting to see an uptick in a certain a way some sort of medical condition presents itself that's not well represented in the training set. And so these are things we call data drift. They can happen quickly, as in the case of the new sensor. That can happen over time in the case of like new conditions that are presenting themselves in higher numbers. And we can quantify that and let people know, like, hey, your model's losing accuracy, or the world has changed and you better go take a look and make sure your model's sort of operating. And then we can actually move a step beyond that, and with different explainability techniques, we can say, if you're doing a classifier, like, here are the regions that your classifier's keying off of, here are the pixels that are causing it to come to whatever conclusion it's coming to, and similar functionality with object detection. Can we understand why it's, what it's keying off of to do object detection? And then finally, we have tools for detecting and mitigating bias. So if you have a classification engine that's affecting humans, making sure that you're doing it in a way that you can feel good about.
Bryan, I think I'm going to ask this question a little bit different to you, because you're looking from innovation and growth angle. So what are those angles? What are the use cases in your case driving growth and innovation?
And I'm assuming you're asking that from the perspective, or the answer needs to be from the perspective of us, right?
Yes.
So, I guess quickly, historically, Squibb AI, we kind of kind of focused on really the data labeling aspect, similar to some of the manual labeling workforces out there. And as we started to, kind of go on this journey, we obviously saw the need as we, continue to speak to more and more practitioners around just a cohesive platform that can kind of bring a lot of the workflows into one place, so that collaboration is something that becomes a focus, and then really ultimately streamlining the end-to-end data labeling and data prep and data delivery. And then, that was maybe end of 2019. And, as I joined last year, a lot of the conversations we've had now is really around just the pain and just a lot of second guessing around project launching, project timelines, and why it takes so long to get these data sets collected and processed and labeled and audited and delivered. Because sometimes this initiative can take, especially if the data sets or the data requirements are large, it could take anywhere 2 to 4 months. And then now you're feeding that into, let's say, a platform like Arthur, and now you're training, and then now inference comes out, and now you realize, okay, well, we already have data drift. So this iterative nature that is required, but the time it's taking between these iteration cycles is something that we really wanted to focus on. And the way we wanted to focus that on that was automation. How can we bring a level of automation where we can decrease the time that it takes to prepare, deliver, train, and then ultimately figure out what more data or what type of data our models need. And that's really the innovation piece, because we see, AI assisted labeling, we see model assisted labeling, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really encompass all the edge cases that might occur during model training. So we have, various techniques that are sort of ingrained into our platform, like transactional learning. We're going to explore some self-supervised stuff later this year that will really bring in accountability to our AI, but also the automation that I think a lot of our teams that we talk to desperately need.
That's great. So that is bringing up another question from my perspective. You mentioned about the life cycles of the different cycles of an end-to-end computer vision project. So I want to ask everybody, what kind of tools and infrastructures are used in your organizations? At what stage you prefer one tool or the other? So can you tell me a little bit about that? I think I'm going to start with Kevin in this, because I think Kevin has seen different life cycles, and it might be the different technologies in different departments. Can you elaborate a little bit, Kevin?
Yeah, so I try to encourage everyone I work with to be sort of as platform agnostic as they possibly can, especially in the beginning. And the reason for that is not just the different platforms have different strengths, but I think one of the amazing things about AI development recently in computer vision is that new models can be used off the shelf within a matter of days. Right? If there's a new transformer model, you can pull it from Hugging Face and use it in PyTorch or TensorFlow. If someone publishes to GitHub, there are new, transformers for vision, you can pull that from GitHub and use it and test it on your own data really rapidly. And that only works if you're able to use whatever platform they're using. But as you move in towards production, that's when you start making really careful choices about how you're going to use things. So that's sort of where it gets a little bit more careful. But in the beginning, for the exploratory phase, try to remain as platform independent as you possibly can. That's my best advice.
Adam, can you tell, from the Arthur AI's perspective, about the tools and how to really leverage your tool or another tool? So what do you suggest to a student versus an organization when they are developing end-to-end products?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into this question.
Yes.
There's parts of the life cycle, but I think generally what we focus on is I think now there's this really rich set of tools emerging where you kind of have these best of breed solutions at every layer of the stack, and there's multiple layers, and what it allows you to do is kind of compose a stack that works really well for you, right? So you might want to be using Superb to do your data labeling. You might have something else that's handling your training. There's a number of solutions for that. Your deployment, your CI/CD process, and then we come in at the point it's in production, the monitoring layer. But the nice thing is they're really easy to kind of interconnect, and so as Bryan was alluding to, just because you put your model in production, like one of the things that often happens with us with computer vision model is, it turns out that you have an animal classifier and you end up seeing like, maybe you end up seeing 80% of dogs that you're classifying, and it turns out the original set that you labeled only has like a handful of dogs in it, right? And so there's like this kind of iterative loop that Bryan alluded to, where you can use what's happening in production and then go back and update your training set and label additional examples that are kind of like better represent what you're seeing in the real world, and then kind of promote that into production and sort of repeat that loop periodically to keep it performing well.
Thank you. Bryan, can you complete the Squibb AI perspective on the tool usage and how to really deploy it?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I could really speak to the deployment piece if you're really talking about really model ops. But this conversation is something that we encounter on a daily basis, right? It's really, and this is not a knock on Kevin's sort of perspective on being platform agnostic. That's something that we see a lot in the conversations that I've had. Excuse me. Data scientists just hate the word end to end. They have this tooling, they have a stack that they are comfortable with, that they probably use in research. Now they're using that same stack to kind of scale out production. But what we've also seen is that those smaller teams, as they start to scale, their infrastructure that they were used to using are going to hit bottlenecks. And typically, from the perspective of some other companies, they tend to throw people at the problem, which can get very, very expensive and very, very slow, very, very quickly. So this is why, like Arthur and myself, we are part of what is called the AI Infrastructure Alliance, where we want to promote the idea of a canonical stack, where please don't reinvent the wheel. Please don't try to build these tools internally. We have something that's much cheaper, much more deployable, and very, very modular. So as we kind of alluded to in the conversations prior, it's really plug and play. We have Squibb has the data preparation piece. Arthur has the observability and potentially deployment piece, and then you can start connecting all these pieces together. Because now, as part of that alliance, we want to make sure the integrations between these platforms are high quality integrations, so that when people do kind of expand their vision around, okay, well, maybe we need to stop using this product that we built internally, let's go out and kind of surface maybe some solutions that we could potentially use and scale, and now it just works beautifully. And now that sort of idea gets validated within the market, and that idea starts to spread, and now this industry continues to move rapidly forward. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Wonderful. And Lynn, I want to see your perspective. You gave us a little bit magic leap, and obviously we want to hear that. But throughout your career, how do you see this life cycle of tool usage, and where does it start and where does it end?
This is a good question, actually, and that currently a lot of companies like the Bryan's company and other companies are doing a lot of labeling tools and help the high-tech company to accelerate their labeling and even help them to build the infrastructure. And actually, in my opinion, that we cannot reinvent the wheel, and we should leverage the helps from the third-party vendors. And but at the same time, for the company, we still have some specific applications and for our needs, such as for specified for our hardware and specified for our software things, and how to connect the third party things, and how to immerse the third party things into our pipeline is another story. That is such as different we have different types of data, and sometimes Bryan's team cannot label it and cannot help us to accelerate this kind of labeling. Maybe just a label Bryan's team is just a label some images or videos, but we still want some 3D things, and how to leverage different companies and interact with different companies and specify our interface with different companies and integrate into as a whole, as a pool. And we still need to, as a company, in MagileApp, we still need to build our own tools and to interact with different companies and specify our uses. And so this is I think this is the internal and the external matrix, and to connect all the pieces together, and to leverage all the parts together. And I think Apple can be an example, because Apple didn't invent or assemble all the pieces together, or just in Apple. He get the leverage from all the vendors, from all from the world, and so they can build they can bring us a very, very elegant and great product. And so yeah. So, but still in the company, we are doing some work to specify different vendors and to integrate into our pipeline. And yeah.
Awesome. We all alluded to the challenges that we face, and we are all talking about the same thing. We are going to the right direction, but we are still on this journey, and we are yet to come to that destination. But let's complain a bit. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that you have been facing during this journey? And can you tell us some failures where what you learned at your organization? And then, of course, we want to talk about the success part as well. So can you give us this contrast where we can see the challenges, failures versus the challenges, but getting success out of a project? I think I'm going to start with Lynn without giving a break.
Actually, for my area, in my area, I did face a lot of challenges. As I mentioned before, that a lot of algorithms need to put in on our lightware devices, and know our high inference speed, and how to make them as a whole, and how to leverage the different informations, different signals from different parts, such as head pose, such as eye tracking, and hand tracking, and controller, how to interact with them, and how to integrate as a whole piece is the most challenging part. Actually, I should say that in Major Leap, we try our best, and we work very hard to push the limit of the boundary of the algorithms. But at the same time, one piece, if you just get a state of art of the on the eye tracking and hand tracking, but it cannot be a product. The product is that how to put all the pieces together. And so this is, in my opinion, is more challenging part, and we put a lot of effort in this part, and how to integrate and how to interact with different parts, and work as a whole devices as a wonderful product is what we are pushing forward. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Bryan, I wanna hear your perspective as an insider and outsider. Where do you see these challenges and success versus failure studies?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, as I kind of touched on before, you know, just I think 9 times out of 10, really it's just about the time and cost that is associated to just getting data ready to the level of quality that the ML engineers need them to be. And that's just been a challenge that we hear over and over and over and over again. And the threshold of pain, I would say, there is definitely a wide spectrum. You know, we have some teams that can't get projects off the ground because they went from project conception to planning to approval to launch, and now they run out of money or time, or the project scope changes, or the needs for organization changes. And then the cost associated to data collection, if they don't have their own edge devices set up, to, you know, pre-processing, processing, and then labeling, because typically a lot of these companies do still engage in manual labeling and auditing, which you know, takes a bulk of the time. So those are typically the challenges we still see, and a lot of our tooling and products try to address that by ultimately allowing teams to basically very rapidly train a heavy auto label model within our platform using a very small ground truth data set. and then use transfer learning to basically take that learning from that ground truth and label large swaths of data very, very rapidly, in a matter of hours or days, depending on the scope of the data needs. And then the auditing itself, we use uncertainty estimation to basically help these auditing teams really understand, okay, where is the AI really uncertain? And that's really the successes that we've seen as we've run a lot of POCs in the last 6 months for clients that have expressed this major pain point around, okay, well, we're spending too much money or we're spending too much time, give us a solution. And we've run these POCs very successfully. And now teams are now shrinking these weeks to months sort of throughput metrics down to a matter of days and weeks, so that they can start to really, utilize platforms like Arthur to get their models into production as quickly as possible, and then iterate also. But that's kind of where we are in the industry.
Yeah, I think I can see the problem because there is an ETL process and metadata process for the traditional relational databases and even with the text. But that culture is still not out there for computer vision. There is no standard yet to be accepted or taking action. I think that's where one of the biggest challenges the company is running into. What do you see, Adam, from your customers? You take the data from Bryan, and then what do their customers tell you about their challenges and how you fix those?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for starters, just to pile on, like the first challenge that everyone faces is developing a high quality labeled training set, and because you can't do anything if you don't have that, and so it's really foundational. But then once you clear that hurdle, which takes some doing, the tools for training and deploying the models, there's actually a pretty robust variety of tools available, both open source and proprietary commercial tools. And then, I think the next challenge that people face, next big challenge they face is when they do go to operate this on production and they start making kind of real online decisions that are actually affecting their business and affecting people. How do you do that with confidence, knowing that you're doing it correctly, especially if it's something where, there was sort of like a human in the loop previously, and there was sort of like this, with humans, there's good and bad to having humans making decisions, but they at least come to the modicum of common sense, and computer vision models don't always have that built in. And so how do you provide the same kind of like oversight for it in a way that just keeps, like, if your model starts making strange decisions or occasionally makes a strange decision, that it gets flagged, that someone can review it, that you're notified, and that you can take the right remedial action to make sure it doesn't happen again, because that does happen, and that's what we focus on.
I see Kevin is smiling there, so I want to hear your challenges, Kevin.
I think the last two comments just hit the nail on the head for the challenges that healthcare faces. I mean, data is king, right? If you ask anyone from Andre Karpati to anyone else, sometimes you make your model better just by getting more data. And that's high quality labeled data. You don't have to do anything else, right? It's almost like back in the day when you could make your programs run faster just by waiting 6 months and getting a new computer. That's the biggest challenge that healthcare faces, because labeled healthcare data is so expensive, and high quality labeled healthcare data is even more expensive. Just to give you an example, when a radiologist looks at, say, like a lung CT scan, and they mark all the places they think there's tumors or candidate tumors or anything like that, they don't mark all of them, right? So it's something that's well known called the satisfaction of search error. And it's not because they're bad radiologists, it's because they have limited time. And if you've already found 10 nodules, you don't need to label all 50, right? So using that as an example, if you want to train your algorithm on that, you're going to have tons of false negatives. And you have to have some way of accounting for that, either by paying people to sort of laboriously go through by consensus. And by the way, when radiologists do this, you can't just trust one because they're all different. You have many radiologists annotate the exact same scan and then agree that it's great. And this is one challenge that we faced, where making sure that your ground truth data is high quality is actually surprisingly difficult when even experts who have been trained in this profession for 20 years disagree consistently. Even upon sort of further discussion, there's still disagreement and adjudication needed. And to that point, not just being able to to auto-label data or get high-quality automated label data, but to identify when that labeled data is leading you to incorrect conclusions. So both on sort of the algorithmic trading end, and once you deploy it, to get consistent feedback, both to just sort of look at data drift or to improve your system by getting sort of weekly supervised feedback. And both of those, I think, are crucial to the healthcare industry going forward.
Definitely. And I think this is a great segue to take one question from the audience. Al is asking, what part of an end-to-end project is most likely to be outsourced? Kevin, what do you think about that?
It depends on the organization and where their core competencies are, right? So if all you want is to take a model and deploy it in your industry, and you already have a pipeline for that, like for instance, Siemens has a huge department designed towards productization for a giant platform that they run for their AI algorithms called Singovia. So they're probably not going to be interested in working with people who are good at that last part of the end-to-end. So they might be more interested in outsourcing algorithmic development. On the other hand, another industry that maybe isn't as used to, say, deployment, like a pharmaceutical company, is going to be much more willing to hire data scientists or machine learning research scientists to develop algorithms and make proof of concepts. And then it's going to be much more likely to hire people to do the actual implementation in a rigorous way.
From the consulting and product perspective, Adam or Bryan, would you like to add something on this question?
Yeah, go ahead, Bryan. If you want to go.
Thanks, Adam. You know, I think there are still a lot of companies out there that are still wanting to launch and deploy computer vision applications. They just don't know how. They have concepts around exactly how their application could be applied to their particular subject matter, but they're not as well versed in deploying these end-to-end workflows. And I think we have spoken to actually a lot of consulting agencies, whether they're private or federal or whatever it is, that are kind of consulting on sort of, you know, project management and project deployment on what to do with data collection, what to do with data delivery, what to do with model ops, that sometimes the end users have really, you know, don't have the infrastructure in place, but really want to deploy. So from that perspective, that's sort of the kind of feedback that I can give around how a consulting agency kind of fit into the computer vision ecosystem. Adam, you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, kind of just piling on a little bit. Like, so I've run the AI team at a Fortune 100 company before, and we, you know, even if you have a large budget, you have a limited number of like really sharp and, you know, data scientists and machine learning experts, and so you have to be really thoughtful about where you apply those people. And ultimately, you know, our view is like they should be applied in like whatever is really strategic to your business, right? So if you're doing medical imaging, like they should be building the best models at finding the nodules and diagnosing things correctly. And a lot of like what we do, and I think other sort of tools providers like us do, is, you know, that stuff that like you need to have monitoring, you need to have explainability, you need to have data labeling, but ultimately like being the world's best at monitoring is not the most strategic differentiator for you. The most strategic differentiator for you is being the absolute best at kind of diagnosing people correctly. And so, you know, we kind of look at it as like we help make sure that you guys are, that people aren't missing out on opportunity cost because they can focus on the kind of strategic aspects of their ML projects.
Yeah, I think I definitely relate to that as a part of Fortune 500. I mean, you don't want to scale your team so quickly because you want to give enough time to train them, because obviously there needs to be some time to teach and some time to develop your own dictionary language. And just I see a lot of times, so you have a lot of money, you start growing so fast, but you don't have this dictionary between the teams. It becomes a challenge. And I think the second part of question becomes very important here. So where is the gap for the consulting organizations? Where should they come and fulfill the gap for these big organizations with a lot of money? I see Adam.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, there's a number of areas. I think, you know, for consulting, like for very kind of specialized skill sets that can be very, very helpful. I think, one area that we commonly get asked to help organizations out is around fairness and bias and things like that, because that is a very specialized skill set and we happen to have a lot of expertise in. And, we work side by side so that we can kind of like help train people on like how to think about these issues, how to approach them, how to solve for them. And so I think that, you don't want to outsource the part, like getting back to like what's strategic and what's the core value proposition of your business. That's not the part you want to have consultants in, but there's a lot of very specialized skill sets that are important pieces in that can be helpful.
Wonderful. Lynn, do you want to add anything on this question?
Yeah, I don't have so much experience in this consulting part. Actually, I should say that for MyJDeep, actually, we did leverage some third-party vendors, just like I said, for the data labeling, and for others, it's mostly for the hardware and the other things. But we still need to specify our product and our project. We still need to do a lot of work by ourselves and to make it specified to our product, because we want to deliver wonderful product to the world, and so we still need to shape the features and to make it better work in our product. So yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. I want to pull some questions. I want to start with Adam. Jeff is asking if bias mitigation happens by cleaning the data directly, or it has more to do with changing the model architecture, or is it a combination?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's roughly like three major areas where you could address bias. First is in the training data, and that's a very powerful place to address it. The second is with your sort of model architecture and training. So whether it's choosing the right architecture or an objective function that incorporates notions of fairness, that's really powerful. And then the third place is, depending on the nature of what you're doing at inference time with like classifiers and things like that, you can actually just do like post facto processing of the inference and actually adjust it to meet fairness constraints that you set. And so, there's kind of like, there's nuance with all three of those areas. And so I think it's about, kind of looking at your use case and deciding where to put your efforts in terms of correcting bias and addressing fairness.
So there is another question, and I wanna ask this question to Kevin. All major companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon offer computer vision on cloud. What are the advantages and disadvantages all that being on cloud versus on-prem?
Right. So one big sort of disadvantage is, depending on the specific regulatory requirements, sometimes putting images in certain places in the cloud isn't allowed. Like, for instance, if you're going to use Chinese data and you're going to train a model, that data is not allowed to leave China. So you have to work with a cloud vendor that will have only, say, nodes that are located in China. Otherwise, the business may be sort of averse, for just natural risk averse reasons, to sending data to the cloud at all. Just even from sort of non-technical folks that won't sort of necessarily understand the right risk and reward trade-off. Otherwise, in terms of using off-the-shelf solutions that are directly published by Google, Amazon, or Azure, typically they're not as performant or competitive with what a good research scientist can sort of pull and develop on their own. And so in that sense, it sort of outcompetes it. To sort of expand on that, more specifically, medical images tend to be 3D, right? In chest x-rays, maybe not, but in a lot of them, they're 3D. And a lot of those off-the-shelf tools aren't going to work directly from those cloud vendors. And so you have to be a little bit more careful about how you choose which cloud providers and what tools for them to use.
Thank you, Kevin. There is a question about using industry tools or research tools, but I think we answered that saying that you don't need to, you shouldn't be stuck with the tool, but you should be really paying attention to the end result. So we actually answered that question. So I'm moving that question, but I would like to answer one last question before we wrap up. The question is, till now, the focus of computer vision has been mostly on the data and software side, such as pre-trained data and the models. Are we going to see the focus shifting to the hardware in the near future? I mean, more specialized sensors, object detection embedded in the sensor itself, and so on. I guess I can take this question from the edge computing as well as the being part of an OEM. I see a lot of embedded systems and this implementations being in the chips where we are talking about the low code versus edge computing. So I think there will be a shift in order to provide the full cycle of smart systems. Anybody who wants to add anything on that?
Yeah, actually, it's not just in the near future. I think currently we are considering the edge computing and how to transfer and the complicated, complex algorithms on the devices. And actually, this is what I mentioned before, that for Magic Leap, we already did a lot of work in this area and how to put the algorithm on the edge devices, on our lightware devices. And as you see that a lot of researchers already focus this area for a while, and particularly some professors in Stanford University and worked in this area, and how to compress the model, how to make the model small and capable on the devices, and how to make it specify the hardware, specify the compression or model pruning. And so this is a very hot area in the deep learning and the computer vision area. And also you see that a lot of company, particularly hardware company, yeah, Apple is one of them, because recently Apple released the A1 chip, and this is particularly for the neural computing some things, and also the Intel, Qualcomm all did a lot of work in this area. And I think it's not in the near future, it's now. And we put a lot of effort in this area, actually, yeah.
Definitely, future is now, and neuromorphology is coming. So I wanna ask a couple of wrap-up questions. We cannot go home without talking about COVID-19 today. So how did it affect your company's vision on computer vision?
I can go ahead and start, I guess.
Yes.
Sure. So this will actually draw an example from Siemens. When COVID first hit, there was this push to use computer vision algorithms and data we had access to develop computer vision models for COVID diagnosis and sort of tracking progress. And that was sort of one thing that changed our perspective a lot at the time, was how rapidly can we build, deploy, test, and validate a computer vision algorithm that's going to make a real impact in the real world. And it was able to happen much more rapidly than many other sort of product pipelines for Siemens computer-aided diagnosis products. So it was sort of eye-opening. When you're placed under pressure, what can you do? And then you see just how fast you can move, and it's sort of breathtaking.
I think I'm just gonna ask Adam, as a CEO of a early stage company, mid-stage startup, how did it affect your business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in a few different ways. One is it actually did have a big effect, especially on like for people running structured data models, where everyone's healthcare habits, their spending habits, their travel habits, like just sort of changed really quickly, right? And so a lot of models that have been trained on 2019 data and 2018 data to get annual season were just toast. And some of them were fine, some were toast. And so like this idea of data for model monitoring gained kind of importance. And then secondarily, I'll say like the acceleration towards like digital transformation stuff moving online, like digital telehealthcare, telemedicine, and things like that has been really accelerated a lot of people's AI work because they've had to find these new ways of kind of interacting with people that have been, for whatever reason, held up by organizational change and bureaucracy and things like that. And so it turns out it's really helped accelerate the adoption of a lot of AI and computer vision and other projects, which it's taken we're now 15 months in, and I think once people kind of got over the initial change, then that's the effect we've seen. Is just let's accelerate a lot of AI projects so we can adapt to this new world.
Definitely. So we have 4 minutes and everybody is gonna give me the elevator pitch now. So where do you see the future of computer vision headed over the next 5 years? Everybody has 1 minute each. Where are we going in next 5 years?
I can start. And I think, in my opinion, it has 3 aspects we can consider in the next 5 years. The first is data. Definitely, data is very important for the deep learning and the computer vision algorithm currently, and how to leverage the different kind of data and different dimension of data, multi-modality of the data is also very important. How to automatically labeling the data, and because I think the data labeling sometimes it's a little weird because it doesn't have a very clear definition of the category or ground truth, and sometimes it has a blur boundary, and so how to automatically understand the data is very important. Such as a lot of panelists mentioned about the weakly supervised learning and unsupervised learning and semi-supervised learning, zero shot, and this kind of work. And another thing is the second part is algorithm. I think the data is one part, algorithm is another part. We are still not there. I mean that automatically understand the environment, the world like the human being. So we still have a large gap and margin to push forward. And another thing is explainable AI and how to explain the black box. And currently the AI deep learning or computer vision is just like the black box, and not like the classical algorithm, computer vision algorithm, you have the very elegant equation to explain it. And so how to explain it like the classical computer vision algorithm is also another topic I think will be useful and hot in the next 5 years. And I think currently a lot of researchers are already working in this area. Yeah, this is my opinion.
What is your closing pitch, Kevin?
Let's see. Data labeling and just sort of data access is going to be, I think, the biggest advance in 5 years. And then I think concomitant with that, I think the low-code movement for easy experimentation is going to sort of bring a proliferation and sort of easy access across a broad range of industries where it's possible to sort of see the qualitative difference right on the spot and then make a decision about how to go forward.
Bryan, where do you see it? 30 seconds.
I just want to iterate on Lynn and Kevin. I think they kind of hit it on the nail. Model architecture is becoming more and more readily available, but the data piece is something that even our company is still trying to figure out. So as it relates to labeling, as it relates to validation, as it relates to quality assessment, cataloging, pre-processing, augmenting, there's just so many things that we can do to provide this amazing toolkit to ML teams as it relates to data. And I think, to Kevin's point, that is going to be the biggest advancement in the next year, maybe 6 months, which would definitely propel whatever Lynn is trying to build into, help them accelerate that even faster. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, not in the next 5 years, but in the next year or two.
Awesome. Adam, anything last message to give?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a big increase in the kind of the enterprise's ability to adopt computer vision and use it, because like you can now go and easily download a general purpose computer vision model that's been trained on a massive data set, and then take it and develop your own task specific data set using tools like Superb that help with make the annotation way easier. And so you can do like the last 20 or 30% of training on that, just to kind of like really dial it in on your use case. And then so getting the barriers to getting this stuff, adopting it, pulling components off the shelf, the building blocks, and putting it in production, and then of course having it properly monitored are much more available. I mean, this was a lot harder 4 or 5 years ago than it is now.
Wonderful. It's been a pleasure. I really learned a lot from this group. And I don't want to end it here, but I am handing over to Patrika, and I will keep you guys here. So I need to ask a lot of questions and learn a lot.
Thanks, Meltem.
Cheers.
Wow, thank you all. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing these incredible insights with us. And a special thank you to Meltem for moderating. This has been awesome. And I know this virtual audience is giving you a huge round of applause. So thank you all again. For the audience, thank you so much for joining us today and asking questions. We've enjoyed having you here today. So please keep an eye on your emails for updates about upcoming AI4 events, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.